I testify in strong support of Council Bill 80. Protecting the stream beds, protecting the wetlands, the steep slopes, and the vegetation that cover them is integral to protecting, in this case, the historic district. And I wish to speak to you tonight briefly about Section 16116, which is one of the provisions of the county code that this bill proposes revising. That code at Section C2 states that in any zoning district in the county, achieving the maximum possible density is not sufficient justification alone to allow disturbance of these most sensitive environmental areas. And I suggest to you that that achievement of the maximum possible density is in almost all cases the reasons why proposed subdivisions ask for waivers that allow them to encroach on wetlands, to encroach on stream beds, and to clear those wetlands and stream beds. And in support of that argument, I will give you a concrete example. And that is case number 418 in front of the planning board now. It proposes 13 subdivisions on an 8.5 acre of land, or 8.5 acre property, perched on the same street at the top of the hills in the Ellicott Historic District where I live. The developer acknowledges that 7.5 of that acreage drains into the Tiber watershed. The developer acknowledges that 1.35 of that 7.5 acreage sits on steep slopes, slopes that exceed 25% or more, and that those slopes are vegetated. They drop down into an active stream bed that itself will drain down Fells Lane and eventually reach the Tiber as it runs along Main Street. The developer proposes to clear cut and regrade 0.27 acres of those steep slopes. That's more than 1/4 of an acre to make way unequivocally for 3 new house lots. That's the only reason that the waiver is sought, to clear cut and regrade 0.27 acres of steep slopes in the Ellicott City Historic District in the Tiber watershed. The impervious surfaces that all of these new impervious surfaces will drain to a vast stormwater pond that is reportedly sufficient to control this stormwater off of those 7.5 acres that drain, including the 3 new rooftops, the 3 new driveways, the 3 new roads and sidewalks that get to those new houses that are sitting where once 2.27 acres of steep slope occurred. I ask you, please, to make one amendment to this proposed legislation, and that is change a singular verb from waivers requested to waivers received. If this is an emergency measure and it requires action, then that action should apply to anything that has not yet received a waiver. And that is the only request that I make. I strongly encourage you to pass this bill, and I thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Walsh. We'll take a look at that and see what the implications are.